you can start with something that might seem a little bit intimidating, but there's a safe way to go about it. If you are spending that time focusing on the body weight stuff, it's going to significantly impact your lifts so long as there's, an awareness.
You don't just have to keep, beating your head against the wall, just to figure it out.
It's almost like you're strong, but when you start to face some of your vulnerabilities, you become so much stronger. You can't just give up because you see somebody else is already working to do something bigger.
Hello, and welcome to the Strength Connection podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kurkowski, and I'm so grateful for you joining me today. So in this episode, I sit down with Colleen Conlon, RKC Instructor, kettlebell coach, and author of Kettlebell Catalyst, a book specifically designed for women in developing strength and overcoming self-limiting beliefs. Colleen shares in this episode with me in detail her struggles with an eating disorder starting in her early teen years, and how her focus for a decade was just how can I be as small as possible. Eventually, out of sheer luck, she wound up working in a kettlebell studio, not knowing much of anything about hardstyle training, but got coached by one of the main instructors, and as she put it, she found herself in strength. And one of the amazing insights Colleen shares here is in her experience training to become a Guinness World Record holder, setting a benchmark for most weight lifted in the Turkish getup in 1 hour. And this wasn't just a simple attempt, fail, and overcome type story. Colleen shares how this journey, she had to completely stop training, essentially challenging her identity because of immense pain built up from scar tissue and pelvic floor issues in 3 abdominal surgeries. So Colleen is truly leading from the front as a coach. I'm so grateful she took the time to talk with me here, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you enjoy this episode, I hope that you can share it with a friend and help spread the message of strength. Thank you very much, and now let's get on with the show.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And Colleen, thank you so much for taking the time. I've been really pumped to talk to you for a while, so this is going to be great.
I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I said you are the golden bell girl, I have to say. I thought there was some crazy place that you found these golden kettlebells that you had, and it's kind of was like, yeah, no, it's just you can paint them yourself right there. But it's a beautiful. The optics are absolutely beautiful. So props on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I wish I could say there was a better story with it, but I was just bored one day and I spray painted one kettlebell with a can of Rust-Oleum, and it turned into about 30 something kettlebells at this point. And, and anybody can get their own gold kettlebell so long as you can order a can from Amazon.
Just take the time. Yeah. I never knew people did that. And then my buddy, Kevin Dea, who I was working with him at a certification in Philly, he painted I think it was his 92 kilogram bell like a Death Star from Star Wars.
I love it.
And I was like, because we had one at the old studio that I had, but I was like, dude, yours is way more badass. And then I started to see people who actually were painting all their kettlebells. I was like, wow, this is a whole different community out here.
Yeah, no, I remember at the beginning, once I started painting mine, my coach's husband, he started painting all of his big kettlebells like animals. Like he has a killer whale and just all of these crazy things. It's cool. It's a little bit of a movement, I think. How are you going to design your kettlebells?
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, we used to have, because we had the different characters of bells when I was in the studio before, and a lot of people wait, we would ask what kettlebell did you use last time? I don't know, the Smurf. And it's or I use Batman, as Batman was the 20K. It's okay. It's yeah, there's getting some different correlations here, but anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. But no, seriously, on the serious note of it, I've followed your page for a while. I've seen the work that you've done, with your book, Kettlebell Catalyst, really helping to promote strength specifically for women, and it's funny because I've talked to a lot of badass women on this podcast. Some of the coaches that I've learned the most from, have been female, and it still seems like there's a little bit of a stereotype on it. And it's I don't see it as much because I talk to them all the time, but there still is. So the work that you're doing, especially to promote strength in women, I think is freaking awesome. So again, thank you so much for the work that you do and for the conversation we're going to have.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So how did you get into this world? I mean, if you would just kind of start a little bit of the origin story to get started, what was it about strength training that really inspired you to want to get in and be a coach?
Well, I ended up falling into strength training totally by accident. It was never my intention to get into kettlebells or strength training at that. But once I did, I started to fall in love with myself. So if I backtrack, I grew up in a household with a doctor for a dad and a group fitness instructor for a mom. And it was probably one of the most unhealthy households that you could grow up in. What I mean by that is we had diet everything. We had 100-calorie snacks of everything. I grew up on fast food. I thought it was just, the norm. And one day, my best friend pulls me aside. This is when I'm in the 6th grade. And she's like, Colleen, everybody would like you so much better if you were skinny. And then she took me into the bathroom, grabbed a toothbrush, and taught me how to make myself throw up. And I struggled with bulimia for about a decade, starting in the 6th grade. So after that incident, I started waking up around 4 a.m. and I would work out before I went to school. So for me at the time, workouts were, burning hundreds to like low 1,000 calories on the treadmill or the elliptical. My mom used like really little weight. So I would do like lots of repetition of these small movement patterns. And, I was just trying to get as small as I possibly could. And every day just really felt like a chore, to wake up and be so focused on, I have to burn all of these calories so that, I can eat something. And if I go crazy, I'm just going to end up in the bathroom throwing up for a few hours. It was just a really miserable pattern that was just nonstop. And then when I was 17, I ended up having 3 of my 4 abdominal surgeries within a month and a half of each other. And the one thing that I felt like I had control over was getting to work out. But after having all of these surgeries, I couldn't work out the same way. All of those small little movements, like I was the crunch queen.
Crunch queen, yeah.
I was the crunch freaking queen. And I remember after having all those surgeries, I don't know why, Mike, because it makes no sense to me. But for some reason, there was no physical therapy for me after all of these operations.
Really?
Isn't that crazy? Like if my
so it's just like, all right, just if it hurts, don't do it.
Yeah. Like I didn't see anybody afterwards to follow up from any of these procedures. And I think part of that might have had to do with the fact that my dad was a part of that hospital and he was like, she seems fine. But I wasn't fine.
Yeah.
So anyways, when I started doing all of my crunches again, I didn't feel my abs. I didn't feel my abs at all for about 8 years.
Wow.
My abdominal sensation did not come back until I started working with kettlebells, but more on that in a second. So when I get back to doing these things, I don't feel my abs and I'm starting to feel my low back and I'm starting to feel the front of my neck. And I'm just like, what the fuck happened to me? So now I'm getting like even more crazy with keeping myself small. So I'm not just restricting food. I'm not just throwing stuff up. Now I'm starting to play with like diet pills. I'm starting to play with laxatives. And it's just getting really, really messy. And it's starting to get really, really disgusting. By the time I get to college, I go to college for musical theater and I'm in a program with about 12 other people. And let's say 8 of those 12 are all girls, brown hair, light skin. They all look like me. So we're, in a constant battle
to compete.
To compete. And it was just, it was one of the most miserable times of my life. And then I ended up meeting my husband, who is also in the fitness industry. And he was like, Colleen, like, you're not healthy. Like the way you go about your life, it's just crazy. Like I would go all day not eating and then grab a box of Cheez-Its and a jar of Nutella and go ham at night. And he was like, what are you doing? And I'd be like, I need to be small and I really want abs. And he was like, well, that's girl, that's not how you do it. But anyway, so I end up leaving musical theater and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life now that I have this college degree that I'm not going to do anything with. So as I'm trying to figure it out, I get started with group fitness. So I find my way to Equinox in New York City,
Okay.
and I'm teaching like 25 group fitness classes a week. And it's still a really unhealthy lifestyle, you know, no strength training at this point. And
just burn, baby, burn. Yeah.
I'm burning my body and I'm burning out. Right. And I'm like, Tim, my husband's Tim, like, Tim, I don't think I can do this anymore. And he was like, well, why don't you start working at my gym? Like, you can begin, personal training, and we'll start to kind of like go down that route. And I don't know about you, Mike. I love my husband so much. He's probably one of the smartest coaches I have ever met. We do not work well together. We just don't.
I've got stories. Yeah.
So anyways, I start my journey with him. He left Equinox at this point. He's working at his own studio.
Okay.
And I leave, and then I end up at like a bodybuilding studio. And that wasn't for me either. I still wasn't finding my groove. And then I end up at another gym where I'm doing a combination of personal training and group fitness. And I'm still just like not in a good place with my workouts, with my mentality, with anything. And then I get to a point where I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm not supposed to teach. Maybe I'm not supposed to train. Maybe I'm supposed to manage. So I find myself back in New York City managing a kettlebell studio. And part of my responsibility in managing this studio is, teaching a couple of these small group classes.
Okay.
And I don't know how I got hired for this position. I think they just like needed somebody yesterday, and I happened to be the girl who walked in.
Right.
And, I thought you use a kettlebell the same way you use a dumbbell. It's not any different, right? So one of the trainers comes up to me one day, and he's so nice. Like, he's so nice. He's like, Colleen, everybody's talking about you on the team. We all know you have no idea what the fuck you're doing. Please let me help you so you don't hurt anyone. And, typically I would have been like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Go away. You have no idea.
Right.
But I really took it to heart, and I let this trainer teach me. And, initially the goal was just learn enough so that I could teach people, and these trainers would just like get off my back.
Right.
And it turned into me learning the big six, feeling really strong, really empowered, because it wasn't as easy as they all made it look.
Yeah. And
a few months into this journey, I got my first pull-up, which was super unexpected. And I remember talking to this trainer, his name's Brandon. I was like, Brandon, how did I do that? And he was like, you've been training your lats. Like,
you
should be able to. You got so much stronger. And I was just in awe. And this was the first time where, I was using movement not as a means to be small. I was using movement without realizing it, getting stronger, learning how to do something that's hard and not giving up.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to start really respecting myself and allowing me to fall in love with myself, because I realized I can do hard things. I was so used to just like giving up. There's so many points in my life where things would get hard and I would just give up or run away. And this was the first time where I was, given a task, and I stayed the course, and I realized this is so worth it.
Yeah.
And that's where it began.
Wow. There's so many threads I want to pull on that there. I mean, it's such a beautiful journey there. The power of performance, right? Of like doing something like a pull-up. Like, if you can't do something like that before, like it's so different in so many ways of wanting to be small, right? I mean, that's such a subjective thing. And, I'm sure like anybody can look at their body in the mirror and see different things. One person might look at somebody and envy that person while they're looking at it being like, holy shit, I'm so fat, like on this side stuff. but all of a sudden you step up to the bar and you pull your chin over. Like nobody can deny that. Like there's some different thing when you change those goals from just a subjective thing to like a performance-based thing that is so powerful. And I've seen it so many times and it never gets old. I still get chills thinking about that, like with the pull-up or, seeing people do a get up, type goal, that something attached with that performance. It's just so different and powerful. And hearing you say that, like I can see the change that just can happen instantly in your mind. When you said that, like you still didn't feel like you were in a right place, like even when like you changed when you were doing group fitness and stuff, was it just how you felt in your body? Was it your mindset still was all over the place? Like, what do you mean by that?
I think at the time I had yet to find people that were, my people.
Yeah.
Like, so my husband, he has a really big affiliation with the Gray Institute, and they're all about, three-dimensional moving and, feeling good, finding different ways to go about movement patterns. And that was great, but it didn't feel like something I wanted to dive into. And then when it came to like the bodybuilding world, it just wasn't something that I like felt pulled to.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost feel like everything was leading me to this studio because I was meant to find kettlebells, because I was meant to learn how to use them so I could teach other women how to use them. Mm-hmm. And empower them for the better. And I really do believe like that's why I've been pulled to all these different places, see what's going on. And then, the universe has just allowed me to impact a lot of women in a positive way. And that's the really big thing that I'm hoping to do with this book. Mm-hmm. is, allowing other women to know this is something I can do. This is not just for men. This can be for women as well. And I, want more women to feel like I can come into this world, and I can come into this world without, without using a itty bitty kettlebell. Like recently, I don't know about you, Mike, but like my Instagram feed, it's always saturated with kettlebell coaches. But recently I've been getting more and more things of non-kettlebell coaches using kettlebells, a lot of women with, pink colors and baby blue colors with these like 5-pound kettlebells. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, you're going to confuse these people.
Yeah.
You are going to confuse these people. So I want this book to really help women know that you can start with something that might seem a little bit intimidating, but there's a safe way to go about it.
Right. Yeah. It's some of the images out there, it still is, and people have seen like instructors from RKC or from Strong First and almost thought of it as that like an elitist viewpoint of it because we're so technical on sound. But I remember it was not too long ago and we had a media person at an old gym that I used to work at, and they made a picture of like a poster because we were doing some new kettlebell classes. And I was so pumped because I was pushing it for so many years of like, we need to get this style of training more into it. And we were connected with functional movement, all that type of stuff. And they made this poster and they're like, what do you think? And it was this, woman in a, just a tank top, like a green tank top, holding maybe like a 5-pound kettlebell with her wrist like this, like holding it off. And I'm like, we can't use this picture. Like, this is absolutely terrible. And I was the only one that was seeing that. And I kind of was in my head, I'm like, am I going too crazy and like zealot in my own way here? Like, do I need to ease up? It's like, no, it's like, there's like, you don't need these light little bitty weights. It's like, you can lift a lot more shit than you think from it. But it's still like, when you were kind of growing up in this area, I know you had, the issues with the eating disorder and stuff like that. And I know your friend kind of, introduced you to the toothbrush and all that you said, but you were also in musical theater. Like, was that demographic kind of almost more is like, cause I've heard like there's a lot of issues with eating disorders and just kind of body dysmorphia in that world of musical theater. Did you see a lot of that? Like when you were going through that with a lot of the different people that you connected with?
My college roommate also had, that's actually one of the ways that we bonded so hard in the beginning. Like we would just stay up super late and like take turns popping pills in the bathroom to get rid of whatever we ate. But to be honest with you, Mike, I used to be so competitive that I I didn't want to talk to anyone because I was afraid that they were going to say something that was going to impact my performance later on that day. Like I was crazy.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. But my roommate, I know she had a lot of issues. There were a couple of I mean, honestly, Mike, I think a lot of people, especially women that I've known over the years, unless you're fully in the know with nutrition, I think everybody has a little bit of disordered eating.
Mm.
Not saying that that's a good thing, just like in having conversations with people, like food tends to always come up between women. I found in my experience between like just growing up over the past like 30 years. I think there's a lot of things that people read without actually having an expert say this is how you should be eating.
Right.
Depending on like what your goal is, be it maintenance, be it losing weight, be it, putting on muscle. I think there's just a lot of confusion still within that area.
Yeah.
I mean, even like going on Instagram, like I'm going to see a bunch of people who say they have a nutrition certification pushing weird juice detoxes.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that, we should all be doing that.
Yeah. Where do you think that comes from though? Like, do you think it's just there's so much information out there that people don't know how to digest the proper things? Or is it more like, because I think nutrition has such an emotional attachment to it as well. I mean, there's cultural things around it. I come from an Italian family. It's like, food is a part of like love. It's a part of that culture. And there's that emotional attachment that gets to it as well. That it always seems like nutrition is the hardest thing to dial in on a collective like connection. It's like it's such an individual basis, and one thing that works for one person might not work for the other person. And it's just because that you think people I know people want quick fixes and stuff like that. I mean, that's never going to go away. We want to solve these things, but do you think it's just there's too much information out there that people are pushing? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of information. I think culturally that makes a lot of sense as well. And I think especially with women, we've been trained for so long, smaller's better, smaller, sexy, smaller, you just want to be skinny. And it's something that needs to be broken because it's bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. So when you got in with, it's Brandon, when he started teaching you like the movements and stuff, did you feel that change right away, like in your strength, or it took a gradual period of time?
It took time. I think in terms of the strength specifically, or the transformation with loving myself, or both.
Well, I'm sure the transformation, is definitely gradual. Was there a specific moment you remember when you're like, maybe this is the track that I was really looking for all along?
Yeah, it's crazy because it has absolutely nothing to do with the kettlebells per se. So I was working with Brandon for a while. I decided to get my RKC certification. So I did my level 1. Right after my level 1, I decided to do my progressive calisthenics certification with Dragon Door as well. And it was like me, 2 other girls, and like 20 dudes.
Yep.
And at the time, I remember the first thing that Danny and Al Cavallo taught us was a single arm push-up, right? And like all of these guys are, on the ground, and like Danny elevates me up onto like this high platform box, and I'm like shaking and struggling. And the whole weekend is kind of like that until we get to the human flag. So a bunch of men are like kicking up, and it's super impressive. And I'm just like, well, what the fuck am I going to do with this one? Like, how are we going to regress this sucker? And it starts off where they had me hanging on a bar vertically, right? And then I take a hand away and I push the hand against the wall.
Yep.
And I can do that. And I can do it for, a fair amount of time. like 30-ish seconds, I can hang out there. And then the cool thing about the place we were at is we had a pole, but we also had stall bars.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the guys are able to get up on the pole. They put me over on the stall bars and they have me climb my feet up into position. And I'm able to hold a tuck flag. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am the coolest person in the world. Like my mind is blown. And I'm able to extend one of my legs. And that was the weekend. I was like, oh my gosh, kettlebells and me are going to be like this forever, because they're like, I can't say cardio got me there.
Right.
You know, farmer's holds, single arm swings, doing all these things to focus on my grip strength, starting to get the sensation back in my abdominals, starting to, you know, strengthen up all of those muscles to stabilize my trunk. Like that's what did it.
Yeah.
And that's what got me hooked. And that's what started making me believe like, maybe I'm stronger than I think I am. And I want to push this now.
Yeah. You know, it's so interesting when you see those, you just need that one example of that word, that line you just said, like, maybe I'm a lot stronger than I think I am. And I think like, it's so cool to see those barriers broken in it. And it's funny because I had a similar, you know, story with body weight based training. You know, it's when I trained for SFB and like the 1 arm, 1 leg push up, that's our test, you know, from there, and like visualizing it and challenging it and actually maintaining that neutral spine throughout. It's a challenge and a half. And it's like with body weight training, it's so interesting because you don't have an external load that forces you to contract. Like you have to mentally like engage and pull that together. So doing something like a flag when you're kind of in that mode of like, holy shit, am I really doing this right now? Like, this is fucking crazy.
You feel like you're magical. Like Harry Potter has to be on like the other side of the room, like waving his wand at me. I have no idea how I'm doing it, but I'm doing it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so crazy. So when did you do progressive calisthenics? Was this down the line, or were you doing kettlebells for a while already?
I was already certified. I started with kettlebells a little over 5 years ago now.
Okay.
And I was working with them for about a year before I decided to get certified. And then within that same year, I ended up going to do the bodyweight certification.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following year, I went in for my level 2.
Gotcha.
And that's how it's all kind of been like trickling around.
Cool. Did you see an instant change when you went back to kettlebell training after doing the calisthenics work?
I don't know if I could say, that. I think for me, going back to the kettlebells, I was like really hungry to push more.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Cause I found like those two just pair so perfectly together with the high tension based work that it's like all of a sudden I was doing body weight training for 6 months, went back, all my lifts pretty much stayed the exact same, if not went up when I went back into kettlebell training. So
interesting. That's definitely not how it worked with me. I like went for the weekend and then went right back to my kettlebells. Like
gotcha.
There was not what we need to do in order to pass the progressive calisthenics certification, I believe is a lot less demanding than what it is for Strong First, like significantly less. So I was already like pretty good going in for the weekend. Like women do not have to pass a single arm push up.
Oh, okay. Huh.
Right. You have to do that at Strong First, right?
We have to. Yeah. So women have to do the 1 arm push up. Men have to do the 1 arm, 1 leg from there. So it's just the one test. It's been a while since I was there. Like that's the only standard for strength that you have to pass. There's some technique stuff that you do, I believe, with recertification. Correct me if I'm wrong. Somebody, message me out on that. But yeah, it's like do the pistol squat, do the hanging leg raise, pull up, handstand. But the 1 arm, 1 leg push up, that's like what everybody freaks out about the night before of getting tested on. Got it. Gotcha.
So for me, it didn't really happen that way. But my husband put me on a program at the beginning of January. I've been like crying myself a river as to like why I don't have my pistol squat up until this past January. And he put me on a body weight program, and 12 weeks later, 18 kilo pistol squat. We got it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Without even, really focusing on the pistol necessarily per se, but just doing all of that body weight training, gaining the awareness within the feet. Where can I create more tension?
Yep.
How can I best utilize these ground reaction forces? It's magical. However, it's like, for me, I was at a point where I was like, I just need to figure this out. I will do anything. I've had other clients try and do some more of like the body weight stuff. And sometimes it works, but sometimes they're just like, oh man, this is boring. This sucks. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So that can be a little, I found that to be challenging at times, but I'm a true believer that, if you are spending that time focusing on the body weight stuff, it's going to significantly impact your lifts, so long as there's, an awareness as to why am I doing this? What am I trying to feel? What type of mind-body connection am I trying to build?
Yeah. It is. It's funny with training, because Pavel actually spoke about this a while ago, which just kind of solidified the point that I had for a while of body weight is really the hardest to coach for a lot of people. We think that it's kind of like a beginner type thing. I'll just kind of get your body weight down. But if you're going for a strength-based work with body weight, you go into like a one-arm type position or like a single leg pistol squat. There's a lot of skill that's involved in that, where it's like actually teaching somebody how to properly deadlift a kettlebell. Like they're naturally going to contract in a way, and you keep building that up, then those stabilizers are going to fire up, where it's actually like you get into some gymnastics based work on that. It's going to be a lot more challenging, and somebody needs to be more bought into, okay, this is a skill that I'm building as well as strength. So yeah, for people maybe just getting into it, yeah, like I can understand like they're not fully invested and understand, and rightfully so. I mean, this is, this has a little bit of some specificity to it, from there. So I totally get it. So I want to pivot this into the work that you did with the Guinness World Records. So you've tussled with, I believe it's the Turkish getup. Did you have for the record for most weight lifted in a period of time?
Yep. I set the record. And then about 5 months later, I beat the record.
So what was the event? What's the
heaviest
record?
weight lifted via Turkish getup in 1 hour for the female category. I'm going to look over. I have them hanging up on the wall. And the first one that I did, I don't count it in my head because it was like, I was not prepared.
Okay.
So the first time I did it, I did 122 reps, 2,028 kilos lifted within the hour.
Okay.
And then the second time I did it, I did 188 reps and I got 3,008 kilos lifted within the hour. And then a month later, it was beaten. And then a week after that, I get a message in my DMs, can't wait to beat her. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, look at what has been started. Like,
yeah,
less than a year ago, this wasn't even a thing. And now we got we got a snowball.
Oh my God. What inspired you, or what made you want to attempt this record?
There's a couple of things.
Sure.
There's a couple of things. So when the pandemic hit, I was no longer running all over New York City like a gym gypsy. So I was commuting. My commute just door to Penn Station was about an hour. And then wherever I needed to go in the city was an additional whatever. And my days would start at 4 a.m. and they would finish around like 8:39 by the time I actually get home. So right before the pandemic actually hit, I end up going back to Equinox. I'm doing group classes and I'm training independently, and I'm working on a virtual platform where I have to work out.
Okay.
So the amount of things that I could actually do with my training were pretty limited just because I needed my energy for this app stuff. And all I was really doing for about a year, this is after I'm certified. It's like 2 years after being certified, 2-ish years. Like all I can really do is swing a kettlebell. So I'm doing 10-minute EMOMs like 4 or 5 days a week. And it's ranging between the 28 to the 44 kilo kettlebell.
Okay.
And I love swinging a kettlebell. I'm just like, this is amazing. This is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Pandemic hits and I'm so happy. I'm so happy because I can actually put together like a better training program for myself, right? It doesn't just have to be swings. However, I'm talking to my coach. So I get trained by Annie Bo. She's affiliated with RKC. And I'm like, Annie, I really want to do something big. And she's like, well, what are you thinking? And, we start talking about Iron Maiden, right? And I'm like, there's no way I can do something like that at this point in time. Like I barely have a 16 kilo press. I don't have a pistol squat.
Okay.
And like, I'm just learning how to do bodyweight pull-ups. So I'm just like, that seems really out of reach.
Okay.
Right. And she happens to have a bunch of world records herself, not through Guinness, but through other affiliations.
Okay.
And she was like, I don't know, do you want to like do a record? And I was like, can I do that? And she's like, yeah. I was like, why don't I see other people doing that? And she's like, well, maybe like that's not what their goal is. But if you want to do something big, like that's a big thing that you can do. So I go to the Guinness site and initially I wanted to do something for swings, right?
Okay.
Okay. So I see
you see Megan's name in there?
So Megan's name's actually not in there currently. So a woman,
she got beat.
Yeah, she got beat. So I believe it's Colette or Claudia. I don't know what her name is, but she's like, I can't find her on social media, but I believe she's out in Europe somewhere. So her name's there. And then I start, doing my research and Megan's name comes up about her first attempt. So I'm thinking to myself, maybe I can go after this. So I start training for swings.
Okay.
And I'm training for maybe we're like 4 months into it at this point. And I'm just like, I know I have a ways to go. And then at one point in time, I reached out to Megan and I was like, hey, Megan, do you have any tips? And she was like, I'm trying to get it back. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm not going to get any tips. Which is like, I get it. Like, I get it now.
Yeah, totally.
I get it now.
Yeah.
But at the time I was like, oh man, she's so mean. She's not mean. She's
one of the sweetest people ever to talk to.
She's working her ass off to do something absolutely incredible. And I'm so excited to see when she gets that title back.
Yeah.
So anyways, so at the time, and this is going to like totally do like a 180 on what we're like talking about.
Yep.
So I've had all of these abdominal surgeries, right? I have a shit ton of scar tissue down in my lower abdominals and it impacts my pelvic floor in a really terrible way. So terrible that up until the past 2 years, if I would work out too intensely, I would get these crazy cramps that would leave me paralyzed on the floor for a couple of hours.
Okay.
Anytime I would have sex and reach an orgasm, I would end up crying on the bathroom floor because I'm just in so much pain.
Really?
Yeah. So it's getting really bad in 2020 now. And I think stress also has something to do with like impacting these like crazy episodes. So my husband's just like, what are we going to do about this? And I see a couple of different gynecologists. I asked them, is like, what is wrong with me?
Right.
What do we do? And like total bullshit from these gynecologists, Mike. The first one, like I mentioned that it's happening during sex. So the one doctor's like, just have a glass of wine. You just like need to relax. And I'm just like, that's not the answer. But thanks. And then another one had the fucking audacity to say, you just need to have a baby. Like it'll change up everything down there. And I'm just like, wow. I don't think this is a good reason to
bring tips, doc. Yeah.
Bring a baby into the world. So I'm just like, a little bit at a loss.
Yeah.
So I don't even know how this comes about my Google search, but I end up finding a pelvic floor rehabilitation center.
Okay.
So I get diagnosed from this doctor, and apparently there's a lot of different things that can be wrong with your pelvic floor.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm finally going to get the help that I need. So they tell me you're going to need to work with a pelvic floor physical therapist, and you're going to need to get injections. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to explain this for your listeners, because I bet some people don't know like what this actually entails. So working with a pelvic floor physical therapist, you're on a table, your legs are spread apart.
Mhm.
This is for men and for women. And somebody goes up the vagina and is massaging the muscles to relax them. For a man, they go up your butt.
Okay.
The injections require a needle the length of my forearm. They insert it through the vulva, and I'm doing these injections every week for about 2 months. And the whole goal is to relax the muscles down there, because mine are just so tight between all of the lifting,
Right.
between all of the scar tissue. Everything's just like a mess. So the doctor tells me this is what you're going to have to do. And I talked to my husband about it, and I'm on board.
Mm-hmm.
And then the doctor says, and you have to stop lifting kettlebells during this time. And I was just like, you're fucking kidding me. Like at this time, I'm doing like 20, 30-minute EMOMs, averaging like 20 to 25 reps with a 24-kilo bell. And I'm just like, if I stop this now, it's going to be miserable to work back up to it. Like I can do it, but like, I don't know that that's what I really, like, I don't know if I want to go through this again. Like it's a lot when you're like doing that much repetition of swings. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And, so I end up going through all that stuff, and I'm noticing after everything, a lot less pain, working out randomly, sex, like everything's so much better. And I'm just like, I'm really happy that I continue to seek help. I'm really happy that, you know, this is a chapter that we can just shut for now.
Right.
But I was feeling really defeated. It's like, I don't know if swings are going to be the thing I go after.
Right.
So during the time, I was like, well, I really do like Turkish get-ups.
Yeah.
And I went into the Guinness website, and there was a record for heaviest weight lifted in the hour for a man, but there was nothing for a woman. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to set it. I can do that. That feels like super attainable. And my coach was like, yeah, when you set it, like whatever happens, happens. Like there's no number to beat. Like, just like go do your thing. We'll see how it goes. And, you know, we'll take it from there. So I'm really excited about it, because it feels like this is something big I get to do for myself.
Yeah.
And it's also something that, like, you know, I'm going to be able to inspire other women to take a chance and do something big for themselves as well. Right. So I don't know if you know this, but when it comes to Guinness, when we do a Turkish get up, they don't count it if you use 2 hands to set the bell up and bring it down. So you have to do single arm chest press to bring it up, do your get up, and then bring it back down.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I didn't know that either until the week before. So I didn't read the fine print, apparently. So
that changes the entire entire program.
So Mike, I was drilling so many get-ups, and I was drilling heavy get-ups. I could do before, so many things had to like change along the way. But I remember in one of our last sessions, I was like, I'm going to do this with the 24. I'm going to do this with the 24. I can do this. Like I was able to sustain it. I had really great stability in my shoulder to just like hold that weight up. But I couldn't chest press it.
Yeah. Unilateral chest press every rep is fucking crazy. Yeah.
I couldn't do it. And I was not training. I was not training specific horizontal pushing patterns in prep for this. And anyways, the week before, I was like, Annie, what the fuck am I supposed to do now? Because we're really running out of time. And I'm like, I can barely, like, I can't press a 20. I can't press an 18. I'm like struggling to press the 16. I was like, I might need to just like do this with the 14 or the 12.
Yeah.
So I can just keep going. And she was like, listen, you know, whatever you do is great. And whatever number you get, that's going to be like our number that we jump off with. And you can do it again if you want to. And I was like, okay. So she flies out to Arizona. She's also like located up in New York. And she flies out. We do the first attempt. And, you know, it's hard, but it's really doable. Like I'm averaging 2 reps a minute. I'm getting like 30 seconds to rest. I'm like singing songs in between. Yeah. But like the thing is, I did not know that this was the weight I was going to have to use. So a lot of it was just like, I don't fully know how much I can push this because you can't switch out kettlebells. Once you tell them like, this is the weight I'm using, you can't swap it out.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And so that was the first one. And I was like, great. Now I just like need to train my ass to do it again and do it better.
Yeah.
So that one takes place in July.
Yeah.
And then we go again in December.
So bring it back quick. When you went into the PT for the pelvic floor, how long did that take, that process where you start to really feel better and you're like, all right, I'm going to go after a new attempt?
Right around the time I moved out to Arizona. So all the PT stuff started in like September. We did injections throughout October, November. And then I was seeing a pelvic floor therapist like weekly, if not multiple times a week, until the end of January.
Okay. Man, it's how long? I mean, that debilitating pain, like how long were you dealing with that?
Oh my gosh, almost a decade.
Really? Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Well, it is. It's so hard to just in that mindset, just to stop and be like, well, I can't stop doing what I'm doing. I'll just deal with it. It's like the devil I know is better than the devil I don't know from there. But just stepping back and just listening to your body, seeking that help out, all of a sudden, a few months down the road, it sucks that you have to stop what you're doing, but that really might be the solution. I mean, I think that's just a good lesson for everybody out there of like, you don't just have to keep, beating your head against the wall, just to figure it out. And hopefully it will just resolve itself afterwards. Actually stepping back, be like, no, let me figure this out. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be different. It's going to challenge my identity, all that type of stuff. But you come out stronger on the other end.
Exactly. It's like, it's almost like you're strong, but when you start to face some of your vulnerabilities, you become so much stronger.
Yeah. Well, that's crazy because like you went from a time when you're kind of like the cardio queen, the crunch queen, had a lot of issues there. Then all of a sudden changed the identity over where you found yourself, you love yourself in strength. Now to be dealt with this hand again of being like, oh shit, now I found what I love to do. Now I have to put this on the bookshelf from there. It's always interesting because we always think of these like stories, like it's a storybook time where you have like your bad time and then all of a sudden you find it and then you got your good times. It's like, no. You might be, it's a pivot. It's a crazy, crazy graph that goes up and down at all times from there. So that's super inspiring that you found that from there. And, so now you did the first attempt. Now you're into the second attempt.
Now we're into the second attempt. Okay. And I will tell you, I was banging out push-ups and chest press and like everything possible so that I would get a better number. And then, we set the goal based on what the last man had done. Okay. The last man, he got 188 reps within the hour. And I was like, I know strength is not going to be my strong suit, but at this point in time, from a cardiovascular endurance with all the get-ups I was doing, and I was doing like 90-minute sessions where I was just up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. Yeah. I was like, we're going to push this from an endurance standpoint. I was like, I'm going to get 188 reps, and 188 reps is going to bring me right over 3,000 kilo. That was the goal that I set with my coach to be like, that's my number. I'm proud of that. And then like, we're done. I don't want to do this again.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember the week before I saw a video of Jackie. Jackie's the one who beat me, right? I see a video of Jackie and she's like doing Turkish get-ups for an hour. And I call up my coach and I'm just like, Annie, Jackie's going for it. Like, I should just stop. Right? Like, you know, she's a fucking beast. She didn't just do Iron Maiden. You know, she did everything 5 reps in a row.
Yeah, she's 5
like,
repped Iron Maiden. Yeah.
I'm just like, it's insane. She's a beast. She's amazing. And I remember reading the story as to why she ended up doing it. And I think it's beautiful. That week before, I remember just feeling like, maybe I shouldn't do this. You know, maybe like this just like isn't, this isn't capable for somebody like me. And I remember talking to my coach and she was just like, what are you talking about? Like, you've worked so hard for this. Like, we have a number for you. We have a target that we're trying to hit. Records are meant to be broken. Yeah. She was like, you can't just like give up because you see somebody else is already working to do something bigger. Like, that's not what it's about. You know, your effort still matters. You still matter. You need to do this for you. And I'm like, okay. And then meanwhile, my coach is like, and she's probably not even trying to actually like, get the record for it. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. She's just doing this for fun. Nobody does an hour of Turkish get-ups for fun.
Yeah.
So we go into it and Mike, I've never had an out of body experience. I don't know how I made it through that hour. Like so I would get through about 32 reps nonstop, and then I would get about 90 seconds to rest before doing it again.
Okay.
And first 2 heats of that, it's like really not that bad. And then when we go for that 3rd heat, I'm just like, maybe I need to stop.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have this music blasting and my husband's there. Annie's there. Danny Cavadlo happens to be there. And I'm just like, I can't stop. Yeah. Like, they're here. Like, my team is here. And I'm literally like Annie happens to be, I did my RKC with Annie and Coach Fury. And I remember the first day I met Annie, she was talking while just like repping out 24 kilo strict press. And I was like, she is the strongest woman I have ever seen up until this point. And I was like, I have Danny here. I have Annie here. I have my husband here. Like, I can't stop. I don't know how I made it through. At one point, like, the self-doubt was so hard hitting in my head. Like, I had these doubts of just saying, stop. It's not worth it. Stop, which has never happened to this extent. And at one point during one of my 90-second breaks, I just start screaming at the top of my lungs. I'm like, I can do it. And I'm saying that out loud because I need to hear it so badly from myself, because internally I'm not there.
Yeah.
And just getting that external, I can do it, kept me going. And it's one of those things, you know, when I talk to any of my clients, you know, as silly as it might sound to talk to yourself out loud, I find for myself, anytime I do something big, aside from this record, if I'm going to try something for the first time, I have to talk to Colleen.
Yeah.
Like, I have to talk to myself like there's 2 people here.
Yeah.
Because if I don't hear it all out loud, it's really hard for me to just like believe it internally.
Yeah.
And I think so much of the time, you know, if we do big things, like, you have to believe it. So if you can't believe it in here, you have to get it out externally to build that up for yourself. And I find that has been so helpful for me, and it's been so helpful for my clients.
Yeah. That's such a powerful message right there. I got chills was just hearing you scream out loud. I can do it. Because I mean, there's a couple things that are so powerful in that. One, just challenging yourself. I mean, I know when you see somebody like Jackie Vazquez in the rearview mirror on it, it can make you probably second guess some things that you're doing. Jackie's one of my favorite people to talk to. She's absolutely amazing. But what your coach said there is like, no, like, this is you versus you. Like, you're pushing on this. Like, it's such a powerful thing that we need to, always recognize. And I think that that putting yourself in a challenge situation where you're challenging yourself, like I used to do this when we hosted tactical strength challenges at the old studio that I worked at, of like people who have never been in an athletic competition or something where it's like they were on stage for that moment. And all of a sudden you were seeing people hit deadlift PRs like over and over again and doing 5-minute snatch tests and, people doing like pull-up records and stuff. And all of a sudden you saw this look on their face of like, almost confusion, like, did I really just fucking do that? Like, holy shit. But that out of body experience you said, when you're just yelling like that, like when you like look at yourself almost in an objective way, right? Where you get out of your own body, and you can do it from a physical thing like you did there, or I mean, even like journaling it out, when you have a time of self-respect, like self-reflection, like that's such a powerful message of being like, I need to hear myself say this. I have my team around me, but those moments of self-doubt can come so hard in your head, and like it can be deafening that almost the only thing that you can do is just scream over it yourself, right? That's so powerful. I really appreciate you sharing that, Colleen. That's absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's so great. This time just absolutely flew by way too fast with you, Colleen. We're gonna have to do a part 2 on this at some point. So the journey that you've gotten to where you are now, from everything from early on into setting the record. I mean, you are such an inspiration into this coaching world. And I'm so happy to hear your story. And I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. If people want to follow you more, check out your book, like what's the best places that we can direct them?
Instagram is always a great place. I am Colleen Conlon, or going to my website, www.colleenconlon.com. And you can get your copy of the book from Barnes & Noble, from Amazon, and I think that's it for right now.
Awesome. Perfect. Till next time, Colleen, thank you so much. Listeners, if you want to follow Colleen, please do so. Go check out this badass woman. I'll see you guys at the next one.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to these Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait, go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.